I'm the Magpie, and welcome to my official video for the Bubbles version 2. And Bubbles version 2 is of course an updated version of the Bubbles version 1 with a lot of new functions, and we're gonna get to all of that, but I want to say first that there's a link in the description to magpiepedals.com where you can pick one of these up for yourself if you want to explore it at home instead, or at a friend's place or whatever. And also I want to say that in this video I'm gonna start with going through all of the controls, being very hands-on, and then Bassmaster Andreas, you're gonna see how it sounded when he tried it for the first time. But then I want to show you and talk a little bit about how it works. And speaking of how it works, I want to give a huge shout out to my friend and also co-host of the Almost Viral podcast, Analog Weapon, who has helped me with all of the updates for the version 2 Magpie pedals. But with all of that said, we're gonna jump straight into going through the controls. And to help me be super efficient and really hands-on, I'm simply gonna have an arpeggiator going so that I can use both hands for Bubbles. So the Bubbles version 2 utilizes the triple bypass system that I came up with together with Analog Weapon. And the triple bypass system is a system where you have 3 different modes of turning the pedal on and off. So you have the classic mode, where you can simply turn it on and then turn it off. But you also have a momentary mode where if you hold it for 1 or 2 seconds, it's gonna register that, oh, now you're holding the button, and then it's just gonna stay on or off for as long as you are holding the button. But to top things off, there is a third mode, and that mode is the tap tempo mode. And the tap tempo mode means that if you tap in a tempo, it will be in that tempo, and then you can switch to a new tempo where it simply turns the pedal on and off in the tempo that you tap in on the bypass button. And you can do a very slow tempo, which is really cool, because then it's gonna be on for a while, and then it's gonna be off for a while, and then on again. And to exit it, you simply hold the bypass button. And speaking of tap tempo, Bubbles version 2 now has a tap tempo for the sequencer. So this other button lets you tap a tempo. And what the sequencer is controlling, just so I have that said, it's the time parameter of a PT2399 delay. So we have 5 small time knobs that are all set on a spectrum that is decided by this bigger master time knob. And over here, we have the feedback knob for the amount of delay, and here's just the mix knob. We still have a speed knob for the sequencer, also, just as on version 1. And it will simply remember whatever you did last. So either you set the speed with that one, and then if you tap a tempo, it will just be on that tempo, and you can tap a new tempo if you want to, or if you start moving this one again, it will move over to that knob. And lastly, here we set the steps. The 5 tiny time knobs on Bubbles, they're reversed, so to speak. Generally speaking, with a delay pedal, you want it to be longer and longer delay time when you go clockwise. But since this is a sequencer and jumping in time drastically makes it sound as if you are affecting pitch. And then you want these to be higher pitch when going clockwise. Makes sense? I hope. But yeah, it's really trippy. You can put it in just 2 steps, so you have a really long one. And it can be too long for the PT2399 to handle, so it starts sounding like really degraded. It's really cool, in my opinion. However, what we also did for the second edition of Bubbles is that we implemented a second mode. So if you hold the tap tempo button, you will enter what is the manual mode. And that means that every time you now press this button, that's when it moves to the next step. So it will stay on the step until you push this button. Which is really nice, because then it means that you have sort of 5 presets or whatever that you can move between whenever you feel like it, especially if you put them in really drastically different. However, since it counts these button presses as button presses and moves manually, now it's also in the manual mode where you can input a clock source. So just a CV gate clock, it will count that as a button press. And you can sync it to other gear. But not only that, it also counts the tap tempo bypass changes as button presses. So if you go to tap tempo bypass, every time it turns on and off, it's gonna count that as a button press for the tap tempo sequencer in manual mode, meaning that it's gonna be a different delay when it comes back on, and then another one next time, which is just really trippy and fun. And to exit manual mode, you simply hold the tap tempo button again, and it will now be in tap tempo. I would say that's all of the controls taken care of. So I think that now I'm gonna Okay, ooh. So I want to end these videos with showing you a bit how it looks on the inside. So Bubbles version 2, just as the Bubbles version 1, actually utilizes a CMOS sequencer, so like a baby 10, if you know what that is, with a 4017. So a 5-step sequencer, and you can sort of underneath this Molex connector with the cables see the small puts coming up here. Those are the steps, and over here is the 4017. And I have spaced it out like this, whoosh, and gone with this green PCB because it's got a lot more layers that I'm used to working with, because that way I was finally able to get rid of the last bit of the click sound whenever the sequencer is active. That was something that, yeah, the PT2399 chip over here is quite sensitive to that type of noise, but I was finally able to get rid of that artifact in version 2, because the noise was actually amplified with the technology that me and Analog opted for, which is using 2 microcontrollers down here to control the sequencer. So there's a microcontroller specifically for the sequencer synced up with the microcontroller that is all for the triple bypass, which is kind of cool and maybe a bit overkill, but I really wanted to make it flawless to the extent that I am able to make things flawless. Reason we're working with a microcontroller for the triple bypass system is because of this blue thing here, which is a relay switch that is always naturally just connecting in an off state. So if you don't plug power in, it's always just latching on, so the signal goes in through a wire and then just through 2 legs in this one and coming to the output jack. But as soon as you input power to it, can then go swippity swappity, and it makes this lovely sound that we can actually listen to. Just sounds like a glorious old school ticking clock or whatever. Reminds me of Peter Pan, the crocodile. And yeah, also as you can see, I have sort of spaced out all the different components in a silly manner, like as many as possible of the resistors are up here in regards to the PT2399, because I just really like to design the PCBs in a way that sort of inspires me to build them. Makes it easier for me. I mark out everything, so underneath these caps, for example, it says whatever value is supposed to be there. It says 4017 under this one, and so on and so forth. So I just know what I should do. But yeah, as far as the design goes, it's a big step up on the inside from Bubbles version 1, even though on the outside it's similar. It's just a new button and shorter lettering, because I have to hammer all of the letters by hand. Thank you for watching, and extra huge thank you if you decide to pick one of these up for yourself to experiment with. So all feedback is highly appreciated, and I will see you in the future. Or past, I don't know.